All right, welcome everyone to the Mostly Star Wars podcast. Today we are going to be discussing The Empire Strikes Back, everyone's favorite original trilogy. I don't know if everyone's favorite, but one of the most pivotal. And we're going to discuss all the good things about it and everything we like. And yeah, we'll go from there. I'm your host, Tyler. We also have your host, Josiah,
Hello there.
and your other host, Quinton.
Hello.
If you guys are new here and you like all things Star Wars like we do, you can go ahead and join our Discord there, listed in the description. And if you feel free, you can also join our Patreon there if that's something you're interested in. Also, all of our Twitters and other accounts that we all do are also listed in the description there. So give us a follow on Twitter. You can get all the updates. I tweet a lot about Star Wars. Josiah tweets a lot about giveaways. So, anything you guys want to add before we get started?
No, just looking forward to hanging out.
Yep, 100%.
All right. All right. Well, hopefully we don't have any issues. If any of our normal listeners noticed, we did have some technical difficulties last week. Hopefully, that doesn't continue. That doesn't continue to happen.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't. It was internet issues on my end, so hopefully I got that all ironed out this week.
Yeah, I was looking into it. I was like, maybe I need some better internet in order to do these streams too, but haven't been able to pull the trigger yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so
yeah, we're
who
jumping
wants
right
to
into it.
Start us off on this one into the wonderful story that is The Empire Strikes Back.
So
we got you 3. Want to start us off?
Yeah, we got 3 years in between the first Star Wars movie and this one. As we all know, the concepts of having multiple movies was a thought in George's head, but he wasn't 100% sure. So by the time this one came out, everybody was freaking out that it was episode 5. They're like, what? What's going on here? They thought it was probably a sequel, like a number 2. But anyways, yeah, so jumping right into the crawl, it's a lot different from where we left off. So 3 years later, the last thing that we saw is triumphant rebels. We have the medal ceremony. Everybody's super excited except Chewie because he got snubbed, didn't get a medal. And
nice.
Now they're on the run. So now instead of the triumphant victory of destroying, the world's, the galaxy's most dangerous weapon, now they're on the run. The rebels are on the run, and the Empire just finds their rebel base.
Yeah, and because you can totally get the sense, especially from the crawl, of like it says that they destroyed the Death Star, they're being hunted, and so you can get that sense of doom right from the start in the crawl of just what's going on. Sorry, Q, did you add something?
No, I was just paying attention.
Gotcha. Yeah, you get that sense of just dread. They're being hunted. And then you get just the Imperial probe droids, which are awesome.
Yeah.
And all their information. But I just like how this movie basically starts with a Wampa attack to Luke. simply because between the two movies, Mark Hamill got in a car accident.
Yeah.
And his face was scarred up. And so they basically just wrote all that stuff in. And I like how you can write all that just for that, but then you get the pivotal scene of Luke pulling his lightsaber
Yes.
to him. And this one is always like one of my favorite talking points for, especially for anyone who doesn't like any of the new force powers that came from the sequel trilogy, because this was a new force power. You didn't see this in A New Hope. And so, you know, each episode a lot of times has new force powers. And it's not something that the sequel trilogy invented.
Yeah.
Coming up with new ideas. And so I like that because it's the first time you get to see him do the telekinesis where he pulls the lightsaber to him. And then you get a lot more of that telekinesis stuff in this movie.
Yeah. Well, even if you jump back a little bit, so you know, it talks about that in the crawl too, but so we have all these probe droids, thousands of them, right? And then one officer is like, hey, you know, one of these thousands of probe droids saw something. And, you know, the first they're like, oh, don't say anything. And Vader wants to know, obviously. And so kind of the beginning of the end. But once again, you kind of see the demeanor of the crew for one, but then also it gets to display, you know, how Vader views everything. But then going back to the telekinesis, as soon as he, you know, saw those pictures and everything, he knew. And then when he then I feel like they were portraying in that moment that he's like, and Skywalker's there. So it wasn't just like, oh, I know that picture, that's a rebel base. I think he, as soon as he saw that he felt the connection that Luke was there, because he felt it, you know, during the last run, you know, on the Death Star. So he was able to feel him in the Force, and so he was once again able to feel that he was there.
Yeah, and I find that interesting because he's looking for Skywalker, and it's right from the beginning he's looking for Skywalker. So he's obviously figured out one, who destroyed the Death Star, and it's not mentioned, but obviously we can tell that he's looking for his son. He's looking for him. That's the entire point of this movie is after Luke. And just I like how everything he says, he's super calm. Vader is calm throughout the movie, basically. But you can tell by his actions, and they always say actions speak louder than words. You can tell that he's on a rampage. He's on a mission by simply how many admirals he offs in his way to getting his job done.
Yeah, for sure.
People are like, oh yeah, we better take him seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is, you know, kind of going down to like his demeanor, and the fact that he calls him Skywalker is kind of interesting if you think about it, because and I feel like, I'm sure if we could like deep dive into like the script and everything, maybe they didn't fully connect these two things. But the fact that he knew that he's Skywalker, right? And he's following him, but it isn't really until the Emperor tells him that's your son. So the only way in my mind that I can connect it, because it appears to be legitimate shock from Vader when he finds out later, you know? So I feel
that is
like
something I was thinking about. Yeah.
it was either like a script thing, or the other thing is maybe Skywalker's a more popular name in the galaxy than we think it is. You know, we think, you know, oh, it's just this one family, Skywalkers,
Or,
you know, so maybe he legitimately was thinking, oh, you know, like it's just this person's name the same as my old last name.
or I was thinking maybe he maybe thought even if it was a relative or something, but not his son.
Yeah.
Not maybe he had some relatives he never met. I mean, he was a slave boy from Tatooine. He doesn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe
I don't know. I kind of feel like he knew that he was chasing. Knew he was chasing Skywalker, and
maybe.
and I mean,
maybe because says those lines earlier, he knows, and he knows he's chasing his son, but he tells
He
the
doesn't.
emperor he doesn't know. He goes, how could that be? Maybe he
Yeah.
hasn't told the emperor who he's hunting and who he's after.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. Because the other thing I was going to mention, and we'll get there obviously eventually. We're still at the beginning of the movie, but the other thing I was thinking is all of his discussions, even to the emperor about Luke, was never hostile until the very
Mhm.
end, which I feel like it was more he was able to fish out what the emperor wanted him to say, and that's what he was kind of doing from the very beginning. So he's like, I'm going to use the emperor, so I kind of have to do what he says till I can, like a means to an ends kind of. And so I feel like he wasn't really hostile against him until the end, and then he's like, when he's like, if you can't turn him, then what? Well, then I'll kill him, but
Yeah.
I feel like it even at that point, it was more he was saying what the emperor wanted him to say, and he couldn't really leave that conversation without saying that, whether he felt it or not.
Mm-hmm. And kind of like Rebecca said that, I mean, his mother's name was Skywalker. Obviously, she had to come from somewhere. She didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And obviously, if she was born from the Force, there was something special about her, something special about that family line for sure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Seth kind of agrees. Obviously, he knew it was his son, but that was after the conversation with the Emperor. But he does say that he does think he's hiding a lot from the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. I don't imagine that a Sith apprentice and their master, especially the apprentice, wouldn't share everything with their master out. I mean,
Yeah, that's
in the
not
order of the
exactly.
Sith, yeah, it's not
Yeah,
exactly the Sith thing. You're
yeah,
trying to eventually become better, stronger, and defeat your master. So if this is
right.
something that might be a weakness for Vader,
Yeah,
he might try to hide
everybody.
it.
Yeah, all the Sith are always keeping a few cards up their sleeve just in case.
Yeah,
I mean,
But
that's
yeah.
basically what he says to Luke. Join me and we can destroy the Emperor and we can put an end to
rule the
this
galaxy.
pointless dispute.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're back. We get to see Hoth for the first time, which is way different than the desert planet. Now we have an ice planet,
Yeah,
snow,
it's white instead of
blizzards.
yellow.
Yeah, complete opposite. Instead of scorching hot, freezing cold. Instead of dying from heat exhaustion, you can die from hypothermia here. And
Hmm.
um, so Luke sees obviously something in the distance, and he's riding his tauntaun and gets attacked by a wampa. So a couple
The
of new
Wampa,
creatures.
the Wampa scene, like the Wampas are just cool in general. I
Yeah,
mean, it's basically Star Wars' Yeti.
yeah.
uh, so
Yeah.
and yeah, just the design and the way you get to uh, just the design and how big they are and everything. And didn't you
Hmm.
get to uh, weren't they were like some kind of AI antagonist in like Battlefront 2 or something? Cute.
The 2005 version of Battlefront 2, you could actually play as them
Hmm.
in like a quick play mode.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool.
You
yeah.
just stomp stormtroopers. It was like after the rebels had left, and it was just stormtroopers at the base, and you just go through and stomp.
That's great.
Hmm.
Hmm. And that's another thing about this movie is it kind of starts out climactic.
Yeah,
The
that's
other
true.
movie ends on a big battle, and this one very quickly starts with the big battle scene.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's I was watching just a little short doc on the movie, and that was basically George saying, we're gonna take the middle, and you want to make them think that all hope is lost or and everything, and kind of make trouble for the antagonist or the protagonists. And
Hmm.
but he was also like, well, we wrote it backwards basically, where the big set piece, the big battle, is at the beginning of the movie. The Hoth fight scene. That's basically the same as the Death Star battle in A New Hope. That's it, but it happens right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then the middle is just Luke learning to become a Jedi and Han and Leia on the run. And then it sets up for the reveal to be the center stage, to be the moment, the build-up moment at the end there. And I kind of like that, because that's one thing that's great about George is he's always made the movies different. They always have a different feel and a sense. And Irvin Kershner is great. He's always fun to listen to talk about Star Wars. I mean, if you listen to his first interview, he said he talked with George and he said, "George, you made something really good. Leave it alone. Don't screw it up." And then he ends up directing. Don't make a sequel. And then he ends up directing what's considered one of the greatest sequels of all time.
Yeah. Which really at the time there was a lot of opposition about the movie and a lot of negative media, which is funny because now looking back, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of love for it. Maybe not from Rebellica in the chat. She said, honestly, it's my least favorite of the original trilogy. But yeah.
But the whole rest of the trilogy revolves around that one moment.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some huge reveals. I like every Star Wars movie adds something, adds new species, adds new planets, adds new droids, which is so cool. Just showing how big the Star Wars universe is, and it continues to get bigger, right? And so I think now moving forward a little bit into the story, where now they're finally under attack. I love once again the fact that you can kind of see how far the rebellion has come. Everybody knows what to do. They're all in their squads. We get Rogue Squadron. Basically,
it seemed more of like an organized force.
Yeah, right. So we have Rogue 2, and they're able to just think on the fly. Luke using the tow cable, which now is one of the most known Star Wars sequences of all, is taking down AT-AT, at Walker, whatever you want to call it. But
did you see that the pronunciation going viral last week? Just everyone fighting about how do you say AT-AT or at or
Yeah,
that's just funny.
I'm of the thought that both of those are correct. You could say either of those to me, and I'll understand what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Did you guys see Dave Filoni when they asked him about it? So they asked him, like, what's the proper pronunciation, and he said it can be AT-AT, at or Walker. I've used that in like all of the different shows and things I've worked on. I did that for a reason. He's like, it's canon. All three pronunciations are canon. I've had clones say all three of them. So I was like, okay, there you go.
That's great.
I don't remember who I saw it for, but there was on Twitter, somebody had a poll, how do you pronounce it? And it was literally the same word twice. So you didn't know which one you're selecting because it's a pronunciation, not a word. You read, but how you read it. So it's just funny.
But those are so designed, and just the effects there, and because you're mixing between the walkers and the snow speeders, and
the
it's
ground
just
support,
and
the X-wings and the transports.
That's great set piece. It's one of my favorites, and just the creativity of how you had to destroy it, and but one of my favorite things is always the ion cannon.
Oh yeah,
and they're like, our first catch of the day. I'm like, wow. I when I was watching that, I was thinking, wow, that guy's got one line in this entire movie, and that's all he says.
And he screwed up.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, there's not much you can do when you get hit with an ion blast.
That's true.
It's gonna disable your ship.
Oh man, I was gonna ask you guys actually this. You just reminded me. Well, two things really. So first, we can talk about Vader's ship, how it basically like dwarfs the other.
The massive Star Destroyers.
Yeah, his is just so big it makes the other ones look small. Which in the last movie we're like, whoa, that's huge, and now we see how big Vader's ship is. It kind of like dwarfs it. But one thing I really noticed in this movie, and now it makes me want to go back to the to A New Hope and watch it again. But I feel like um, the Star Destroyers were like more like lit up, or like it made me more think of like a Star Trek movie where you could see there's lights on in different parts of the ship. Like I don't know, like I don't know why I didn't notice it so much last movie, but I feel like this one you could definitely see like people had their room lights on. You know what I mean? Like these lights are on, these ones are off, and so I don't know if that was something that was added in this movie and it's new, or if it was something I just completely missed.
Isn't you think that's funny? Like you could watch a movie we've watched thousands of times.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know exact number. You don't when you watch it that many times you don't keep count anymore.
Yeah.
But you can always find new stuff. You'd be like, oh, I never looked off into the corner in this scene before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
what is Vader's ship called? I'm spacing
so
now.
that one is also debated because it's only written down. It's only ever written down in material. So people don't know if it's the executor or the executor.
That's what I was thinking, the executor. I don't know why I had that in my head,
but it's spelled the same. Executor is spelled the same way.
Ooh, Devastator. Bruce says.
So
the Devastator I'm pretty sure is one.
But I think it's it just depends on how you think. Do you think it's the executor because that makes sense for Vader? But it also the executor makes sense for Vader too.
So the Devastator was the Star Destroyer that Vader was on in A New Hope when he captured the Tentative 4.
Oh, okay. And then Rebellica says executor or executor according to Trivial Pursuit. I'll take that.
Speaking of Trivial, Quinton and I went camping over the weekend, and one of our primary games we play is Star Wars Trivial Pursuit.
Nice.
I was like, we need to figure out a way that we can play this with Josiah on stream.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah. And then so after that, the other difference of this movie is the first movie we get introduced to the characters, and start building a little bit of the characters out. But this one, I feel like you really start refining the friendships and the trust, and obviously, the love interest there. Maybe one-sided a little bit more in this movie than the other, but between Han and Leia. So I thought, their banter in the first movie was funny, but man, like watching this movie again, I was like, man, there's so many things that they say that just get me bust up laughing. so
I'd rather kiss a Wookiee. I can arrange that.
Yeah. Chewie's like, yeah. Oh man. But yeah, so I thought that was good introduction.
Sorry, I got caught leading chat. Rebecca's like, how do 3 Star Destroyers miss the Millennium Falcon? I mean, it happens more than once. Happens
then
more
they get so
often
close
than
to
you
each other that they run into each other. They're obviously not paying very good.
I am not a committee. Yes, I love that line.
Not paying very good attention.
Yeah, man, that's hilarious when they run into each other. It totally makes me like think of like the Thrawn books too. Just like how how good he was versus like other admirals on like different ships, but it's just like, that would never happen, he wouldn't run into someone else's ship, unless he meant to, but
Those are pretty big ships to be, running into each other.
yeah.
Or it's in Rebels, is it the series season 1 finale, or is it the episode 1 of season 2 where like Vader's right on their trail and then he gets stuck in between them because they like try to pinch him off, but he he gets stuck in the tractor beam.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those pilots aren't very good.
Yeah.
What? You don't think so?
What, some of the pilots? Oh,
wow,
man.
that's some.
No, I think some of the generals aren't very good, but it's only because they're only a general for a few days before they get force choked by Vader.
Yeah.
No, they're only a general for a few days before they get promoted to admiral. Then they get force choked.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm pretty sure when captain to admiral, he got a big promotion.
Yeah,
Admiral Piet was moving him.
It's like admiral. as the previous admiral falls at his side.
Mm-hmm. He's like, pick up his admiral pin.
Oh gosh, I think we've gotten a little off track here.
Yeah. Okay, so where are we now? I think maybe we're to like everybody escaping, basically.
Yeah,
everyone for the most part's off the planet. They're fixing the Millennium Falcon, so
I think it's kind of interesting that they're going after the Millennium Falcon. Is that like the only ship that they were chasing? And there's a lot of transports that were going away.
It would make sense because you're following Vader's pursuit of a ship. It would make sense for him to choose that ship because that ship is the one that foiled his defense of the Death Star.
Yeah,
so I'm sure there were other forces that were potentially going after the others. But if you think about it, like after the ion cannon disables the first Star Destroyer and they get past and make the announcement, the first transport is away. Well, that means they probably jumped to hyperspace, right?
Yeah.
And they're gone. Mm-hmm. The Falcon is the only one that can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's true too.
Yeah.
That's why it's still there for them to chase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that's probably more realistic that the other ones were able to go into hyperspace and that one wasn't.
And escape.
And then the second, I think that is also partially true because Vader knew that it was the Millennium Falcon at that point. So he was able to recognize the ship and know what it was. So
see, look at that. You have a little, what you might think is a plot hole, and all you got to do is talk it out for a few seconds and it's gone. But yeah, so then they're running and they're running through the asteroid field, which I think one thing I think is funny is because like Luke takes off and he's fine. He's like, nope, we're going to Dagobah, and he's just gone. And then they're being chased through the asteroid field, which the asteroid field is really cool.
Yeah,
I know, like set design stuff, and some of them are just potatoes.
Yeah.
They've said that. I've seen stuff where they're like, yeah, some of them are just flat out potatoes. We used in the background. Yeah. But I mean, just the core. I don't know why, but my brain does not want to say the word. But the way they're flying through the asteroids with all the ships and the TIE fighters, and they're getting blown up and everything. And you get Han's favorite or famous line, never tell me the odds.
What is it? 1,740 or something, right?
No, it's like 3,000.
Oh man, we gotta look this up.
That won't take long.
That's funny.
But I like how again you're like Vader's just nothing is in his path to get what he wants. And then especially that's really when we tell him that he went to the asteroid field and that, it's too risky to follow them. And he said he doesn't care what the risk is, that he wants them to do it.
Asteroids don't concern me, Admiral.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a little bit later, when they're the Star Destroyer are traveling through the asteroids, you see one collide with a Star Destroyer, and then they show the holograms. All of the admirals talking, and one of them vanishes off as he's like falling back. Like, oh, Vader just let an entire Star Destroyer of people die to push through this asteroid field, and
yeah, 3,720. Yeah.
3,720. Okay, I knew it was in the 3,000s.
Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. And you actually just reminded me of another thing I was going to bring up too. Is so when Luke's leaving, I love once again, how there's a connection between like him and Anakin and the way that they treat droids and the way that they talk to R2-D2, right? And so I love this sequence when they're going to Dagobah and they're kind of talking back and forth. But something else I never noticed until this point is that did R2-D2 do like a voice to chat in the cockpit?
Yes.
Because he says something like words come up and he reads it.
Yes. So
I was like, what?
So in the original version, when it was released, it was written out in English what he says.
Oh.
He's since been updated to Arabesh, which is just the written language of Star Wars. I think basic. And it's not it's the same for like in A New Hope when Obi-Wan is doing all the controls to shut down the tractor beam on the Death Star. That was on the original cut was all written in English, and now it's all in Arabesh as well. And so those are some of the changes. So you can go up and look what he used to say, but in reality, you don't really even need to know what R2's saying at that point, because you get with Luke's line, you get what he was saying. And even in the movie, if you were watching it in theaters, you only get you get it for like a half a second. So the only way to actually know is at home to pause it and read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, like you said, he's like, he was basically saying something along the lines of like, do you want me to put it in autopilot?
Yeah. Yeah. And his offline manual for a while is the line. And it's you can totally understand what R2 is saying just based on Luke's response to it.
But yeah, so you never noticed that before?
No, I don't know why I never picked up on that. But this time when I was watching it, I was like, what the? And I like rewinded a few times and I was just like, wait, can I read this?
Well, you can.
And Rebellica says it isn't hard to learn. So
I never thought about it just being fun.
This book that I have has a translator. So you can just translate all the symbols into English.
That's cool.
I haven't learned. I just know you can do it.
Yeah. No, that's sweet. And then, so kind of going along that same thought process, once he gets into Dagobah, he continues on. And once again, it goes to how good of an actor he already was at that time, Mark, because he's having these full-on soliloquies, with a droid, that obviously isn't talking back, but he is having like a full-on legitimate conversation with R2-D2, and it plays off without a hitch. It doesn't seem weird or strange or anything. It's so good.
He's just acting with a droid, and you're right. Nothing seems out of place, or it just seems like they're going on their own adventure.
Oh, one thing that might be a little out of place, and we could talk about this for a second, what you guys thought about it, is when Han and Luke are saying goodbye on the planet before they leave. there's like that kind of awkward long pause of like Luke just kind of staring at Han, and then like doesn't really say anything. And then they just kind of leave, you know. I feel like there is a few of those in like different, like really all the Star Wars movies, but I feel like that was like definitely one of the moments where like you as the audience are kind of like left hanging, you know, like is he gonna say something? And it's almost like it gets to maybe 1 or 2 seconds too long of just sitting there.
Yeah, I
little
never
awkward.
noticed really what.
Yeah.
I mean, I
wanna
kind of
see.
get what you're getting at, but I've never really noticed it. At least not like that. Maybe that's just an editing thing.
Yeah, it could possibly be because it is a really big moment, and I think they didn't know this at the time, but that was the last time that they're going to see each other before Han gets frozen,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then a lot of time passes.
Well, that is kind of. I'm watching now. It's kind of awkwardly long pause, and they both
Yeah.
smile at each other, and then they say, "Be careful."
Yeah,
So-
you too.
That's
It was
kind
like
of-
you too. It's just it's just a kind of strange scene.
And then Chewie's like, "What's wrong with you guys?"
See-
that head lean.
What I thought was funny is what I was looking at when I was watching that scene is where Han is standing. He's in the gap
Oh,
of the Millennium Falcon there at the front, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I'm thinking, wasn't there like a lifeboat pod, whatever, there for Lando in Solo? I'm thinking he's taller than that area is. Did he have to like crawl through a little tiny hole to get to that front pod that was on there?
You're talking this part,
Yeah,
this front part.
yeah, that front part. Yeah, but he's standing, and it's like only up to his waist. So did he like have to
It's up to
crawl
his
through
mid chest.
That's so.
I mean,
That's what I
it
was
might make
noticing. Like,
sense.
was like scale when I saw that. Was looking at that scene.
Yeah. I mean, it was an escape pod for Lando. I don't think he was thinking of anyone else if he needed to get away.
Yeah.
Probably had room for him and his capes.
So Asparagus says that his Empire's not his favorite because he always likes the space battles, which I agree. Those are always amazing. It does mostly lack them. There are a couple TIE fighters that get destroyed, and some Star Destroyers get destroyed by simple asteroids. And I think there is some good space action, but it's not a space battle, I would call it.
I was gonna talk on this earlier when Rebellica said that it's her least favorite original trilogy, and I kind of agree with that myself for kind of the same reason that Asparagus here said that I am all about space battles. You guys know this. That's like one of my favorite things about Star Wars, and he's right. This is lacking that big climactic moment. I mean, you do get it somewhat with the walkers and the snow speeders, which is fun. It's just not quite as epic. I feel like. I was not to say I don't like this movie. Obviously, there isn't a bad movie in the original trilogy. They're all fantastic. It's just if you have to pick an order of 3, it's on the bottom for me.
See,
yeah, that is an interesting thought.
I used to agree as a kid. When I was young, I would be like, I didn't really, I never wanted to watch Empire because, it's got a boring, slow middle part where Luke just learns how to use the Force. And as a kid, that wasn't like, I always wanted to watch the one with the speeder bikes. And so, but as more of an adult, and you can take the lessons that Luke receives in his Jedi training and kind of dwell on it, I think is one of the reasons why it was so good.
Yeah. And I feel like kind of going back to the very beginning crawl of this movie, it kind of sets it up though early. And I feel like the majority of us, 99% of us are rooting for the rebels to win, not the Empire. And, you know, this is the Empire's movie, right? So from the very beginning, we already know they're taking ground, you know, and the rebels are losing ground. They're having to, you know, leave their base. They're running. They're trying to go into, you know, deeper hiding somewhere else. So really, I mean, the Empires, if you look at the beginning sequence of this movie, the Empire won. You know, they were able to escape, you know, some of them, but you know, that was a victory for them. So in a way too, I mean, it's there, like, I think it was like what Tyler said, there's definitely space action and, you know, going through the asteroid field, and then you got like the space slug scene and everything like that. There is some like cool space scenes that have action in them, but the rebels aren't on the, so it's not really ever going to be cool per se, because they're running, it's someone's chasing someone and running versus two entities fighting it out.
So
yeah, I mean, this is definitely, the Empire definitely wins in this movie. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, they beat them on Hoth. They have captured and diffused Han Solo. They have they've injured Luke Skywalker. It's definitely a victory on their part.
So, Asparagus says that he agrees with Quinton, but that he doesn't get why people place Empire ahead of all their movies. And I think the reason why The Empire Strikes Back is considered one of the greatest movies of all time is because you can really think that there's only one other Star Wars movie that doesn't revolve around the fact of the twist of this movie.
That's true.
There isn't another Star Wars movie that doesn't revolve around this moment in this movie. And that's A New Hope. And that really, it's the only one that you could say, okay, you can watch without knowing all that. Whereas Return of the Jedi is literally trying to get the answers to everything that was said in the twist, the "No, I am your father," and so that, I think that moment. Plus, I'll also say the reason why it's one of my favorites is because, like you said, the Empire wins, and so without movies where the bad guys win.
Empire?
Yeah, he's the 1%.
No, okay. Well, here's my point though. Without the Empire taking a shot and beating up the rebellion, you don't really believe that anything's in danger. You know, I didn't. It's the same reason like why Infinity War is pretty much my favorite MCU movie. I never took for granted that the good guys were gonna win until eventually they didn't.
Yeah.
And then it makes you think more and you root more harder for them in Return of the Jedi or in using the MCU in Endgame. It's like, oh, okay, these guys can be beaten. This Empire is a real threat, not just, you know, a bug that they have to wipe off the windshield. And so it gives you that sense of dread. And I was watching it's on Disney Plus. It's called Conversations with the Masters. It's just basically it's mostly just John Williams, Irvin Kershner, and George Lucas, and they just discuss about the movie. Well, George put in the line, there is another. And he says his point of that line wasn't like, hey, there's another Skywalker out there, or there's, you know, another Force user out there. It was more of him saying, trying to tell the audience that there could be someone else. So Luke could be dying here.
Yeah.
It was to give you that sense of, I really, you know, he said, I killed off Obi-Wan in the first movie. So it was really him telling the audience that, you know, I could kill him off. You don't know. You better pay attention. It gives you that sense of dread.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like similar to Rebecca also kind of mentioned it. She likes the Luke and Vader parts, and being a hopeless romantic there, and Leia being her hero. This is
Mm-hmm.
a really epic part in her story and her love story, but also between Luke and Vader. I mean, those are huge pivotal points in all of Star Wars. Those couple of things. So Vader finding out Luke is his son, and then Luke finding out that Vader's his dad, and
Mm-hmm.
then really this is the first time that Han and Leia, you know, quote unquote, act on their true feelings for each other. And both of those things have huge implications for the rest of the story. Like what happens if, Luke and Vader never are able to meet or never find that out before one of the two dies. That's huge. And then Han and Leia, if they never got together, huge. So this movie actually like hits on some very strong, like, emotional threads in the story of Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars. And they're really,
Yeah.
they're two love stories, but one is the love of a father and a son, and the other is a romantic love. So it's a really deep movie that there's not as much action, but there's a ton of character building. And we can also say a lot of it is to the score. The music to the different scenes that are emotional, like they just hit different. It was perfect.
So I just want to say, Rebecca always wondered how the Empire found out Luke's name in the first place. That, I think there is a comic book. It came out a few years ago, and it's Boba Fett that tells Vader.
No, so
Mhm.
in that comic, the only thing that Boba Fett finds out is the last name, which is Skywalker, which would be how they would know they're chasing Skywalker in this movie. But my thought, because when Vader's talking to him, says, he knows his name. I just feel like it's the Empire, right? They have massive amounts of resources, spies,
Yeah.
anything you could think of. So there's definitely ways to
If
get
you
information on these rebels.
if you think of
Mm-hmm.
like Luke isn't hiding his name, and
Yeah.
if you think one spy in the Rebel Alliance, one Imperial spy, the entire Rebel Alliance knows who destroyed the Death Star.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker's not a
So
hidden name. He's a hero amongst them.
Yeah.
he
Yep.
got a medal and everything. So I mean, they could just.
Yes.
So they could just, everyone in the Rebel Alliance knows, and that could be something that's, just gets out.
Whoever printed his name on the medal.
But I kind of wanted to bring it back to what Josiah was talking about. And if you really think about this movie is just like Fast and Furious. No, I'm joking. I was going to say it's family. But it is, because it's the family between Luke and Vader and Anakin. And also, but it's also about found family in the group with Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, and then even now Lando, of that's your family.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not necessarily related, that's your family. The people who are around you, who you care for, that's your family. It doesn't matter how they're related to you blood-wise. And that's kind of what this movie also is about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys
like
reading
Of course, your family.
what Patrick said. 100%.
No.
Star Wars equals Fast and Furious.
Mhm.
Darth Canuck approved.
No.
It's all about family.
It's all
With
about
the Force, your family.
That's great. But yeah, the whole movie is about and it is about the found family as well. It can be, and Star Wars started it first, so there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually interesting that Rebecca brought up too, talking about Owen.
Of course we got.
I always thought Owen prevented Luke from going to the academy to protect his identity. I actually, now that I thought about that right now, it is kind of interesting that even though Luke grew up knowing that was his aunt and uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
They still could have given him their last name. Could have been Luke Lars.
Yeah.
Like just as an extra protection. But they never did that, and that could have caused even further, I guess, confusion, or later it could have been like a bigger reveal or been more of a shock, versus like we were talking about Vader knowing that there's a very good pilot who has a strong connection to the Force, who could do a 1 in a million shot to destroy the Death Star, whose name is Luke Skywalker, the same name that he used to have, so there could have been, a little bit more of like a disconnect, and then finally finding out, no, his real name isn't Luke Lars, it's this. But even if it was Lars, it still kind of be his family. So
yeah, and Anakin met Owen in Baru. Are you laughing at Walking the Sky?
Yeah.
Return of the Family. Wow.
Oh man.
Oh, so and then episode 25, you're gonna be Rise of the Family.
Oh man.
Oh, this got derailed big time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay. Let's refocus on. So now, so Luke gets to Dagobah. He sees this crazy little green guy. He's rummaging through his stuff, trying to eat his like rebellion rations. He's hitting R2-D2 with his stick, and
rewatching that, I was like, man, Yoda is crazy. Like I remember him being the goofy little guy, but he is like insane in this part. Like he is totally trying to drive Luke crazy to see where his patience is at.
I again watching
him.
that conversation with Masters, they were mentioning how they wanted Yoda to be like that little insignificant creature that you wouldn't think is anything, and he's just a nuisance and just a bother. And there he is, the one of the most powerful Jedi.
But you start to
because you think of his size, you think of he's useless. Oh, that's just a useless, weird looking character. He's a crazy old man.
You get a glimpse of the wisdom when Luke says he's looking for a great warrior, and Yoda goes, "War not make one great."
Yeah,
you see this. I'm like, that's very an interesting line right there. That's how when you guys start to see some wisdom in the character.
Yeah,
and my goodness, we didn't even talk about Obi-Wan at the beginning of the movie. I was gonna tie it in later, but we never even talked at the beginning.
Yeah, so the Force Ghost.
We see Obi-Wan as a Force Ghost, at the beginning, with Luke, which is really crazy, especially kind of shows where Luke was at this point. If you go similar to now, spoilers if anybody hasn't seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, big spoilers, give me like 10 seconds.
If you're not up to date on Star Wars, you're at the wrong podcast.
Yeah, probably that too. But so, why couldn't he convene with Qui-Gon? He says because he wasn't ready yet. He wasn't ready to see. And so at this point, Obi-Wan is basically, he already had, learned that lesson, because now this is in the future from that point. So he's already learned from Qui-Gon. I think it was more with Qui-Gon saying you weren't ready
that it was more like him just trying to make another teaching moment of, and Obi-Wan needed to get past his own past first, whereas Luke he doesn't have anything holding him back really from moving on and forward with the Force and his life, and that's why so Obi-Wan can communicate with him, or at least
Yeah.
that's Obi-Wan is his master. Is basically Luke's master at that point, and him saying, "All right, you're to your point. You're able to move forward. Let's go."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously times were different with Luke. I mean, kind of each phase is different within like the Jedi organization, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second with Yoda. But I I do feel like kind of a difference in the situation because with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, Obi-Wan had already mastered the Force. You know, he was all mostly in his head during this. But I feel like, you know, there wasn't, let's see how to explain this. So being able to convene with somebody who's a Force ghost, um yeah, and I think Rebecca is kind of saying, sounds like she's talking about what I'm talking about. It isn't just on, isn't just on Obi-Wan, it's on Luke too. Luke, so because Yoda tells Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith that, you know, it's something you can learn to be able to convene with your old master. You know, it wasn't like, oh, you can just do it, you know. And so it's one of those, it was kind of an interesting moment. It kind of reminds me of, and you touched on it earlier, but Rey being able to do certain things without any training. But like Luke wasn't trained how to speak with Obi-Wan. It just happened when he was like near death.
Well,
you know.
Well, and it wasn't the first time though either.
Yeah.
He didn't appear to him.
Yeah, he
like,
didn't
he doesn't appear.
He did appear to him. Like he heard him before, but to actually be able to see him and everything.
Yeah, because in A New Hope, he tells, well, and the first thing he does is he instantly talks to Luke. He says, "Run, Luke, run," and then he tells him when they're destroying the Death Star to use the Force, not the targeting computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells him the Force will be with you always, because that's how Obi-Wan says goodbye.
Obi-Wan said it like a couple of times.
If you're new here,
but anyway,
that's a kind of our own
that's an
inside joke.
Inside joke, yeah. Go back a couple episodes, you'll understand.
But okay, so anyways, so yeah, he sees him, which was like pretty epic, you know, for this movie, being able to see him and everything. And then, you know, kind of fast forwarding to this moment with Yoda, when Yoda realizes who he is and what he's actually there for. And you can kind of see that turn from being like the crazy guy, you know, to, you know, realizing what he's there for and everything. And I just love, like, as soon as he starts breaking it down, and then they have the communication between the three of them, really. But it's mostly Yoda talking to Obi-Wan's Force Ghost, right? They're kind of talking back and forth, and they're debating and arguing if he's ready or not. And I love when Luke is like, you know, like, I'm ready and
Ben,
stuff.
tell
and
him I'm ready.
Yeah. And then Yoda says, I've been teaching, like, you know, Jedi students for 800 years. I think the Council of Who's Ready, to me, I'll leave that, or however he says it. But it was like a total mic drop moment. Like, I've been doing this for 800 years. I think I know when somebody's ready. Like, not you.
Yeah. And the whole moments with Yoda there, and when he changes, and you can totally tell that right when he changes that he was obviously testing Luke's patience, and he's getting irritated and annoyed with this little creature that's not showing compassion like a Jedi should. That's he's quick to getting upset, and so those are all Yoda's concerns.
Mm-hmm. And anger was what he really focused on. And, I think that's what it really was, and that's when he ties it into his father, the Jedi, the council, Yoda included, their biggest failure was Anakin. And so, and if you remember, Yoda didn't want to teach him, at the beginning. And that was the couple of reasons why. He was too old and because of the emotions. And so now he's faced with the son of the very same person, and having those similar, the anger and the different emotions, and already being as old as Luke was, which was a lot older than Anakin was. So
that's true too. But he had a different childhood where he had an actual family and
asparagus,
such.
yeah, 100%.
800 years, but not very successful at the end, and totally dropped the ball.
Well, even before Anakin, we have Dooku.
Yeah,
Dooku was Yoda's. That was his Padawan. So
yeah, but I don't think he dropped the ball with Dooku. That's a whole other story, though.
Yeah,
I think Dooku was good.
You think Dooku was good?
I do.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Before he was turned. I think asparagus has got some issues with Yoda that he needs to resolve there.
Oh man.
But yeah, their conversation there, and I love the principles of the Jedi and how he teaches them. And he says, is the dark side stronger? He's quicker, more seductive, or quicker, easier, quicker, more seductive.
Yeah.
And it's just, it almost makes kind of how we're talking about the hero's journey and the decisions you have to make as you grow up. If you think about it, Luke asks Yoda, well, how am I to know the difference? And he says, when you are calm, at peace, passive. And if you think about that and you take that into your own life and you think about making decisions, you think you make better decisions when you're calm or at peace, or when you're angry and upset? Just like Vader in the Obi-Wan, his sole focus was to go after Obi-Wan, and it was his sole purpose and rage, and he let all the other rebels get away. Am I missing chat? So
no, you're good.
So those are just good lessons to take and then apply them into your own life, or just, when you're calm and at peace, you're more likely to make a better decision. That's the whole point of the Jedi. And he also says the Jedi use the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack.
Yeah. And yeah, I think you know the point that you're hitting on, and similar kind of points that the chat's bringing out, is I think Star Wars as a whole, and the reason why people become so passionate with it, is because you can take little pieces of the story and apply it to your life. You can identify with some of the characters. You can identify with the feelings of some of the characters, or, why they did certain things, or, in some way or fashion, you can kind of apply all of these different lessons and warnings, in the Star Wars movies into your own life, and I think, people who can do that properly, really can live, more peaceful and better lives by applying, a lot of the wisdom that are written within the Star Wars movies. As crazy as that sounds, it's true.
And I think that's what George's entire purpose was, or at least what he was trying to get at with all of his movies, because if he straight up writes it on the title card for every Clone Wars episode. Yeah. Here's the lesson to take away from this episode. And that's one of the reasons why the Clone Wars is so good is you can see those lessons and you can learn from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we
All
get the
right.
training. We get the training sequence now. So Luke's finally training. He's running around with Yoda on his back and
He's
doing
got a
some,
Yoda backpack.
yeah, doing some cool flips and standing upside down and levitating rocks. And
It's not all
he's
lifting
doing,
rocks.
yeah, it's a little bit lifting rocks, but and then so finally, well, I guess we could go to the cave, right?
Yeah.
So the cave was um, once again one of the deeper moments I think in Star Wars that if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it at face value, it's still an interesting scene. But I think the more you think about it, the deeper it really becomes. The and it kind of goes back to when he Yoda tells him that he's afraid, and he's like, "I'm not afraid," and he's like, "You will be."
Yeah.
You will be. And so you know you get the cave sequence, and he ends up facing his fears, his inadequacies, perhaps, or where he feels that he's unable to prevail against something, and it ends up being Vader. And in at this moment, he's able to defeat Vader, which in a way gives him confidence, but I feel like at the same time it almost ends up doing the negative effect, because then later I feel like he's too much of the aggressor in the fight with Vader, and he's not prepared to fight someone at that caliber whatsoever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think even when he leaves, Yoda knows that as well. Yoda knows he's not ready, but
Mm-hmm.
goes back to goes back to Fast and the Furious. You have to protect your family.
uh, yeah, Asparagus was saying that as a kid he couldn't recognize Luke's face. I actually will agree with that. It took me a long time when I was a kid watching that to recognize that it was his face, because I just thought it was like the face of Vader and just being in shock. But I get
Oh,
the whole, it's because it's Luke's face in Vader's helmet, and it's basically just a warning of, you start down the wrong path, that you'll just become Vader. And
mm-hmm.
it's poetry, it rhymes. It just
Yeah,
goes back to Return of the Jedi when Luke looks at his hand that is now, it's his black gloved hand after he just cut off Vader's hand. And he
mm-hmm.
and so it kind of mirrors, and he has to think about that moment back in the cave of like, well, you got to be careful, you're going to go right down that road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like once again, like when he sees that, it's also like in a way like a premonition for him of realizing that that Vader is someone to him, someone close to him
Yes,
as
I
well.
agree.
You
It
know,
kind of relates to that moment as well. Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of feel like, it that moment is just so deep, and the more you kind of dissect it, I feel like, there's little pieces that you can nitpick here and there that you can take and apply later along the line. That it was an awesome experience for Luke, and obviously, if we could think that, we could imagine that Luke was able to dissect it and feel the same way about what he experienced in there.
Mm-hmm. So we've been skipping all around. Do we want to? Which part do you want to? Do you want to start talking about the Cloud City? And
Yeah, let's do Cloud City.
so Cloud City is really cool because it's one of the few places, especially if you think of the original trilogy. Uh, you think mostly all you've seen is desert, rundown towns in the desert, and or Imperial ships, basically. A little bit of a rebel base on Hoth and Yavin 4. But Cloud City is the first time you get to see like an actual city. It's all nice and clean and white, and
Yeah.
actually starts to look futuristic somewhat. but then you realize that the whole city is built on us mining Tabana gas, and so it's really just built on everything else that any city we have is built on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's just interesting to see. And then, with Cloud City comes the Lando system. I mean, Lando's not a system, he's a man.
Yeah.
Lando is so good. I love Lando.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really interesting because, yeah, Lando is definitely one of my favorite characters, especially the more you get in Return of the Jedi. And I'm even listening to currently Shadow of the Sith, the new book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about Lando and Luke's investigation into Exegol and all that stuff. It's pretty interesting so far, but yeah, Lando is great. He's always great, and the mustache is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was one. It was great to get him as an actor, in this movie. I feel like too, especially for the time and everything. So I think him as just an actor in general, he's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going back to like his character, I love that. Once again, we were kind of talking about Han and Leia. Han by this point, over the past 3 years, has changed a lot from when we first met him,
Mm-hmm.
and McClunky.
He changed a lot. Yeah, he
in the
changed
bar,
a lot.
right? And so now we kind of lose that, is he going to do the right thing? Is he going to do everything for money? Is he going to be a traitor? Is he going to turn on someone? You know what I mean? Like we kind of start feeling like, okay, he's a good guy now. He's going to put his life on the line for his friends, for the right thing. He might, be stubborn about it, but in the end, he's going to be, one of the heroes that we know him to be. And so I feel like this was a great time to introduce Lando, because now we have another similar character that now we don't know, is he going to be a good guy? Is he just always the bad guy? And we get another character that can grow, and he can learn from lessons as well.
The way Han describes him in the movie, you think, okay, we're just gonna meet another Han Solo like character, but then you're like, well, he is kind of like that. But if Han Solo was successful,
yes, yeah, I think that is what it is, and I feel like that's why, Han would never admit it, but I think Han was in a way why he went to him, because he knew that he had power. He was like a swindler, but he also had power,
mm-hmm.
like, and he felt like he had enough power, clout, influence to be able to help them or do something, which is a lot coming from Han to say, oh, we need help and we can get it from this guy.
Yeah, I get Han is successful, but I'm more meant like if he was successful in like his smuggling and turn that
in his shadiness.
Yeah, that's more what I mean. Is he was successful in his shadiness. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah,
because Han Solo was a great smuggler, but he had to dump his cargo. Mm-hmm. Jabba didn't like that.
Hey, we've all had to dump our cargo every now and then.
Even I get bored at sometimes, Jabba.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and his problems with your droids, I got people who can fix that. and Han is too good to take help from a friend, especially because he's got that little bit of jealousy of, we used to be on the same page here, and look at you running an entire city.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and Lando's trying to show off for the pretty princess, and Han's not taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so Cloud City, I think once again it was, if you can transport yourself back in time to see that for the first time, man, just, what a beautiful, environment to just, be in for the moment. And even like once you go
Mhm.
inside, like you were saying, it being like kind of almost what you would imagine in space in the future,
Hmm.
even though this is in space a long time ago. But like instead of like, like the dusty old kind of towns, you get like this, you know, clean cut angles and, white and, clean
Mhm.
and yeah. So I thought this was like awesome kind of like to jump into. And I think I don't you guys might know this, but I don't know if they planned this, but seeing Vader in that environment was like top notch. I mean, Vader looked like at his best, like with like in an all
Hmm.
white room. Like, oh, I love that.
The contrast, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And Rebecca in chat mentioned how she enjoyed how Lando was depicted in Solo, and that Donald Glover did a great job. And yeah, I totally agree there. He was fantastic for that role. I couldn't have done better. Couldn't have been a better choice for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that series. I know there hasn't been a lot of information recently, but they did at some point announce a Lando series, and I believe when they announced it that it was gonna bring both of them into the
I'd be for
show.
that.
And I heard the rumors of they were writing it more like a kind of How I Met Your Mother style show
I was just
where
thinking that.
where Billy D. Williams is telling the story of his younger self, and then they'll cut back and forth between time,
Mm.
and I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
It's Star Wars, of course, it'd be enjoyable.
Right? You find something
Mm-hmm.
something to enjoy with all Star Wars.
Yeah,
So
100%.
and then with the Cloud City, and then I think it's kind of funny. Everyone is basically cowering to Vader
Yeah.
except for Boba Fett.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, you're gonna test it on Han Solo. You know he's worth a lot to me, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
and Vader doesn't. Vader just takes it. He's like, oh, you'll be
Mm-hmm.
the Empire will compensate you if he dies. Don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll cover you. Because he's got
Uh-huh.
that same like mutual respect.
Like
Mhm.
potentially, is he the first person we've ever seen talk back to Vader and not be killed right away?
I think technically you could say first, but now I'm thinking like the Inquisitor talked back to him in the Obi-Wan show. He said, "Hey, we should go after them. We can destroy them," and then they went after
Yeah,
Obi-Wan, like Vader said.
but
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of where the idea of Boba Fett being uh, such a strong character, and he has very little screen time, and everybody's like, "Well, he never did anything." Well, he talked to Vader with the amount of authority. Like he wasn't just okay. That's
Yeah,
true. Yeah,
Rebecca did. Leia.
Leia's
Yeah.
talk
That's a
back.
That's a
Yeah.
different respect
That's
there. There's a lack
a-
of
But hey,
respect
hey,
there.
sass.
But
She
that's
has
his
lots of
daughter.
sass.
That's his
Yeah.
daughter, though. Every daughter will talk back to their dad. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Leia talks back to everyone.
Yeah,
That's true.
Tarkin.
Yeah, Tarkin.
That was fantastic.
She openly insulted Tarkin.
Yeah.
As he just right after he told her that he just signed the warrant to have her killed.
Hmm.
Mm.
Did Krennic talk back to Vader? He didn't really. He's more like
No,
he
he
more
just
like
kind of- he
whined.
kind of-
He whined to Vader.
and kind of demanded that he get his Death Star, and then Vader's like, "No, you get choked."
You get
So he
choked.
didn't get away with didn't let Krennic get away with trying to make demands of Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Inquisitors. Yeah, I was just mentioning the Grand Inquisitor talking back to him in the, I wouldn't even say that was necessarily a talking back to. It was just more like, hey, I got a better suggestion, maybe. But Boba Fett was totally like, hey, he's worth a lot to me, so can I just have him?
Mm-hmm.
Can can we move on here? and
Mm-hmm.
but every time Lando talks to Vader, Vader goes, "Pray I don't alter the deal any further."
Yeah.
But when he talks to Boba Fett, he's like, we'll compensate you if it gets screwed up. Don't worry,
Mm-hmm.
we'll cover your back."
Yeah.
But okay, so
Yeah. And I never caught something else in there. And I like originally, and I want to say this was, I don't know, a year ago or something, the first time that I had ever seen anyone bring it out. But in this movie, Boba Fett has like braided hair from like a scalped Wookiee on his shoulder
yes,
or whatever. And like just once again, like we know, like, the strength and the power of Wookiees, and and then obviously we kind of already grow to love Chewie. And so I feel like that once again is showing how this mysterious character who's able to talk to Vader, who works basically, one on one with him. He doesn't have any middleman. He's standing right by Vader, in these scenes and stuff like that. That yeah, kind of just like it makes this story even more like, who is this guy?
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you see that's all you see of Boba Fett. You get him saying a few lines,
Mhm.
but those few lines. Well, one of those lines that Vader says to him is no disintegrations, because so you're like, okay, well, he just makes his enemies just disappear into thin air.
Yeah.
But and then the way he talks to Vader, you get that sense of, well, even everyone in the Star Wars universe considers Boba Fett a big deal.
Yeah.
That's the top of the top when you talking bounty hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so you kind of get that feeling
Mm-hmm.
because of all the bounty hunters when Vader hires them, Boba Fett's really the only one he talks to specifically because he
Yeah.
knows him.
Yeah.
And you know that he's also like one of the only characters that Vader is at that point, especially the way Boba Fett talks to him, is that Vader respects to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where you think of him as such a threat, such a bad guy.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so we want to get to their duel, and
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, we gotta start. Can't skip over one of the most important lines in the movie, right before Han is frozen in carbonite.
Yeah.
oh yes, yes, the I love you and I know,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
there?
That was epic.
There's a line in I think it's don't they say it in Empire of Dreams, Quinton, where Irvin Kershner and Harrison Ford basically had a conversation, and he says the line was he was just supposed to
So
say
Han was just supposed to say "I love you" too, and they
Yeah.
filmed it. They kept doing it shot for shot, and Irvin Kershner said it just didn't feel right, and
Mm-hmm.
basically just told Harrison Ford that, you know, Han's a swashbuckler, a smuggler, be Han when he does it, and then Harrison Ford just came out with "I know," and then that was what was kept because it was just perfect.
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like I'm trying to. I don't know if it was on that or like one of like the bonus discs for this, but I feel like someone was even saying at one point that Han was gonna say that he'll see her again, and then they took that out because they didn't know if he'd be in the next movie at that point.
there was a point that Harrison and George Lucas had basically a fight over whether Han should die.
Mm-hmm.
And because Harrison Ford wanted him to die, he thought it would be, if he died in that moment, it would make it would make his sacrifice more impactful to the story going forward.
Yeah.
And George thought that if Han Solo dies, how is he going to sell Han Solo toys?
I don't think that's the driving factor of it, but
He would only get to sell Indiana Jones toys.
I'm sure they'll sell a lot, but not as many as Star Wars.
Yeah.
But
Bellica mentioned that she knows one of the stormtroopers from that scene. That's pretty cool.
Oh man, that's awesome.
That'd be cool to be
From the freezing scene.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. So that's what we were talking about at the time, and there were definitely some stormtroopers there.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
Chewie
Well, I
pushed
like
one
how-
over the edge, and
Yeah, when Chewie starts trying to fight, and Han's like, "No, don't do that. This is not the time for this. If you can't do anything about this now. And now it's your job to protect the princess." He gave
Yeah.
Chewie that command, like, it's time to. You can't help me at this moment. All you can do is help her.
yeah, which is also heartbreaking because you know the relationship him and Chewie have,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and yeah, the "I love you" line, the I know, it's such a great moment. It's just iconic. I know.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'll even tease my wife all the time when she'll say "I love you." I'll always say "I know."
Yeah, me and my wife have custom keychains that hers says "I love you" and mine says "I know."
Nice.
Yeah, when we got married, someone gave us pillowcases, and one says "The princess sleeps here," and the other one says "And Nerf herder sleeps here."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and I love that too. I love when they're talking about that, and when she's just giving him all these insults or whatever. The one that offends him out of all the things, who's scruffy looking. I love that
Right?
part. Out of all the things she was calling him, that's the thing that. Hey, don't
That
attack
gets
my
it.
looks here. You can attack my character, but don't attack my looks.
And it fits so perfectly because when you get to Return of the Jedi, and she's got shot, and they're told hands up, and he puts his hands up, and she pulls out the blaster, and he goes, "I love you." She goes, "I know." I love that part.
Yeah.
when she does it back to him.
So good.
And then we get the Han survives the carbon freezing, and he's loaded into the Boba Fett ship.
Boba Fett starship.
Yeah.
The fire spray, is that what they want? What's the class of ship they called it?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Doesn't
know.
have a
I don't know
name
why
yet.
they changed the name, but whatever. It's whatever.
The slave ship.
Yeah. The slave one. But anyway, and so yeah, he's loaded up into there, and they don't do very well stopping him. They just they get to the platform and shoot a couple as he's flying away.
Yeah.
But and I think it's funny how Luke goes to find Vader and to confront Vader, and R2's just like, "Peace, I'm out," and goes and finds the rest of the group.
Goes and finds his other friend. He misses C-3PO.
Yeah. Yeah, and C-3PO in the meantime is about to go into a burning, melting furnace, getting thrown in pieces or whatever by a bunch of Ugnaughts, right?
Yeah.
then he's being carried on Chewie's back with his head on backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I love it when Chewie tries to get into the Millennium Falcon and he's like, Chewie, you have to duck.
Yeah.
I was like, I think pretty sure he was already ducking to get into the Falcon, but
Have to duck even more.
Mm-hmm.
and then we get the great. I like this saber battle. It's so good, and just the way Vader talks to him and treats him.
Mm-hmm.
You again, like we saw in the episode 3 of the Obi-Wan show, of him only using one hand.
Yeah.
And I think it was more of like Vader was also testing him. Luke goes through a lot of tests in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think what he's really doing with that one-handed stuff is testing how hard he can push Luke. Because he doesn't want to kill him. His main goal is to put him in the carbon freezing so he can take him to the Emperor. So he doesn't want to kill him, but he's also testing how far he can push Luke, because as he starts hitting him with harder and harder blasts as he gets further into the fight, whether it's with the Force or he's using the lightsaber, he's taking big old swings at him. And I was finding it interesting, like when Luke falls into the carbon freezing pit, and he goes, well, maybe you're not as strong as the Emperor thought. And he's like, all too easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it interesting because in that right before he pushes him in, Vader tells him, Luke, your destiny, or he says, Skywalker, your destiny lies with me. Obi-Wan knew this to be true. Which I would say, yes, Obi-Wan knew it to be true. That's the whole point of why they were hidden from him. Because it is his destiny to not to be with Vader, but to just confront him and what's going on. And so, yeah, kind of, Rebellica said Luke was not a great fighter then. And so then he falls in, and Vader's surprised when he jumps out. And that's when he says, oh, Obi-Wan has taught you well. I found this line interesting because I've never paid attention to it. But what he says next is, you have learned to control your fear. I don't even know, like, I've never either heard that line or just never thought about it. But it just almost goes to Rise of Skywalker, where Luke tells Rey it's a Jedi's duty to confront fear. And Vader is saying, hey, you learned how to control your fear. But then he's like, well, you need to give in to your hatred and join the dark side. And then that's when actually I think Luke does a little bit, because he does fight back a little heavier, and Vader falls over the edge a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that is like where it kind of shows most people can't work on each emotion all at the same time. So maybe he was able to kind of control his fear, which we were talking about in the cave. So he got like this confidence in him that he was able to fight without as much fear, right? But at the same time, he wasn't in control of his anger, his hatred, and then also, like at the same time, like he still needed to work on patience, because even like leaving to go there, both Yoda and Obi-Wan were telling him not to go. And Yoda even says something along the lines of, because he's like, oh, I have to save my friends. And Yoda says, you may save them, but you might destroy everything that they've fought and suffered for, And so in a way, he he wasn't fully in control of all of his motions. Maybe he was able to work on the fear from, that trial that he went through while on Dagobah. But when he went there, he didn't finish the training as far as like the hatred and to be like 100% at peace. And so that's why Vader was able to get under his skin the way he did.
Mm-hmm. And I like when, as the fight goes on there, that they battle a little bit, but then Vader just, he's not even doing a lot. When you think of like how much Obi-Wan threw at him,
Yeah.
and how many rocks they were throwing at each other during their
big
fight.
like boulders.
And Vader is basically toying with him and just throwing stuff at him, and like not even a lot. Wasn't even a lot of stuff to overwhelm him.
It was like one empty crate. No,
but he just overwhelms him so easily, basically showing him that he has a lot to learn yet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think like kind of like Rebecca just mentioned it about Luke being a prodigy. And I do feel like sometimes that's where some like casual fans, and not like being a diss, but just people that aren't super into Star Wars can have like, bad feelings about certain characters in the different movies and shows. Well, there is certain Jedi like born with a natural ability, with a very high midichlorian count, and just naturally talented. People like Dooku. Obviously, all the Skywalker family, they they have something that a normal person with some sort of ability when it comes to using the Force, like
Mm-hmm.
theirs is a lot higher. So them being
Mhm.
able to, like Luke, being able to pull the lightsaber out of the snow in this episode, that he was never taught that. That's because, people like Anakin, people like Luke, and even like, let's fast forward a little bit, like Rey, whether you love her or you hate her, like she is a Palpatine. So
Yeah.
one of like the most naturally gifted in the Force in Star Wars history. So she also, just going along with the same thing, if it just as much as Anakin was naturally gifted, and that's why Luke is able to hit these milestones quicker than the average person, then in the future it only makes sense that Rey could do some pretty amazing things without even really being taught or proper training.
I think, yeah, it's more like he just needs the little bit of training to
Mhm.
unlock he has the natural ability, and so you just need to be taught how to unlock that natural ability.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get that,
Mhm.
it starts to come to him easy.
Yeah. And like, or maybe it's even like kind of like control. Like Luke, like you were saying, when he starts fighting back, right? He all of a sudden starts gaining ground on Vader, and that usually shouldn't happen. But it's because the amount of power that he has, but uncontrolled.
Yeah.
He isn't like poised and controlled, but it is a lot of power.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think after that moment, yeah, he takes Vader by surprise. He gets one good hit in, and after that, Vader's just like, nope, no more. No, we're
Yeah.
we're done playing here. We're gonna have the whole conversation, and he gets that one little whack in it, and he's like, no more. Your hand's gone.
Mhm.
Sorry, bud.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's like, I like my mechanical one, so you might like it too.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I don't think he likes his mechanical limbs.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is something that Rebecca says that she doesn't get about, or you don't get a sense of how long it takes to get from one place to the other in Star
Yeah.
Wars. Yeah, it's really never explained. I always picture that but between the time they get from leaving Hoth and are being chased to And they could have even been at Cloud City for even a couple days before they told the that the Empire was there. And so I almost get the sense like, but between from when Luke starts training to when he arrives on Dagobah is probably a good 2 weeks. I don't, that's almost the way I've just my own head canon. But yeah, there's not a good identifier of like how long it's been completely.
Because the Falcon had to limp there from the Hoth system at sub light speeds. So
you could there's a perfect time right where that cut is it to be like, okay, well there could be in a number amounts of time in between there.
And that is kind of interesting. Like across all the Star Wars movies, I feel like a lot of times the only time that you hear about distances, it has to do more with communicating. Like, oh, they're too far to communicate with. Not necessarily like, oh, it would take so long to get there. And, there's not a lot of that in there. And that's why I kind of, I like, like Rebecca, you had brought it up too, that you love the Thrawn books. I love those too, because in those books, there's a lot of where it does break that down. It breaks it down into like, how long is it exactly going to take to go from this place to this place? This battle's happening over here. It will take us X amount of time to get there at this speed, this amount of time to get there with our Skywalker, like it. So it kind of does give you like a better idea of like the distances of places.
Those books are so good too. They're really well written, and the voice actor who does them does his best impersonation of Lars Mikkelsen from Rebels. He does the exact voice. It's so good.
Yeah.
But okay, so Luke and Vader, he's got his hand cut off. And then so then he tells him the story and he goes, Obi-Wan never told you the truth.
Yeah.
And this is where you're getting the big old reveal. And the moment that basically every other Star Wars media has ever been written about. The biggest spoiler in all of cinema history, practically. And it's just an interesting point because you get that it's just a turning point where the whole everything you've known about leading up to this point is just thrown on its head.
Yeah.
And I was reading.
Yes, you're Rebecca said.
Obi-Wan is your father.
He wishes that were true.
Yeah, he does.
But it's all thrown on his head. And the thing I was watching is George actually did a study and was asking if kids would be traumatized by this. And they basically had come to the conclusion that if they were old enough to handle it, they would handle it. It would be okay.
Yeah.
But if they were young enough, if they were on the other side of that, they were too young, they would believe that's the bad guy, he's lying. And so that was almost like perfect, because you can even think, well, you leave this movie with all kinds of questions. This movie doesn't really have an ending.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, what happened to Han? He just gone? Boba Fett took him away and he's just gone.
Yeah.
Okay, is Vader telling the truth? And how did Leia sense that Luke was in trouble to turn back for him? So
or even the Emperor. Was the Emperor telling the truth?
And so and you think about all the questions that people have and all the complaints that they had, like of the Obi-Wan show when it started out. It's like those you gotta let the story play out, because look at all these questions you would be left with, when you back, and just be happy. Back then we had to wait 3 years for them.
Yeah.
I say we, but I wasn't waiting then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't alive then, but
Yeah, but could you imagine watching this movie and being upset with the fact that Vader is Luke's dad and then never watching another Star Wars movie? It's like you would miss so much, you know? But it is such an epic like moment. Like you said, everything in Star Wars before and after really revolves around, you know, this point. And I think that that's another reason why I really like this movie is Vader was like only in the first movie for like 10 minutes. And so he was epic, but you didn't really get a full grasp of him until this movie. I think this movie is where you start realizing the full extent of who he is, the power that he has, and then the connection when you then get that connection to your hero, like and the person that you found out at the very beginning, you know, you've already heard about him. You've already heard
Mhm.
about this man, and then this is what he's become, and that the fact that he's not dead, you know, like all of these things start playing. Then you're like, wait, Obi-Wan said he's dead, you know.
yeah.
It's like
And
what?
so Rebecca says that she loved the Simpsons episode. Yeah, the one
Oh yeah.
where he reveals and he's yelling about the spoilers as he comes out as other people are trying to see. I have literally had to remind Quinton not to do this when we were leaving the theater. It's like when we were leaving The Last Jedi or something.
He would do that.
I was Quinton, shut up. These people are trying to they're gonna watch it in 10 minutes, you jerk.
He's like, I want green milk.
Oh, more like walking out there. I can't believe they killed Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh man, but it is true. Like, I mean, when you leave the theater, like everybody's a little bit different. When I watch a movie, I want to be 100% invested in it. So as soon as that starts, like it doesn't matter who I'm with, like I'm 100% focused. I try to be in the movie. And so when I
Mhm.
leave, it takes me like a good 15 minutes to like come back to reality because I'm still in that movie. I'm thinking about it and, you know, all the, you know, the different plots and twists and, you know, everything that's going on. It takes me a while to like unwind before I can
Yeah.
even say anything. I'm
I
just like
agree.
silent.
Kaloni always asks me, like, we're done watching an episode of Obi-Wan. She goes, what do you think? And I was like, okay, give me a second. I'm compiling it all.
Yeah.
I don't have
100%.
thoughts yet.
You're going to have to come to next week's podcast.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of questions. But yeah, so, and then you had to wait 3 years to get your answers back then. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, you had to wait all that time, which, I mean, it's a good wait.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to have to wait for us to talk about Return of the Jedi, but you only have to wait a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. And we'll leave it at the point that we only know at this point that Vader is Anakin Skywalker now and that he's Luke's father. We don't know that Luke kissed his sister yet.
That's fair.
At this point.
He left
It's
that
not
real
weird
for another
yet.
movie.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, she kissed him.
True. That's true.
He did not initiate that.
And we don't actually know
just let-
like the customs on, you know, either Tatooine or
Or Alderaan.
Alderaan. For all we know,
Open mouth
I mean,
kissing between siblings is.
I mean that could be common.
I hope not.
Wow.
This took a dark turn. Thanks, Josiah.
Oh man.
All right. Well, we do kind of got to get. This one's running a little bit long. We got to get going.
Mhm.
If you guys want to go ahead and if you missed the beginning, again, go ahead and join our Discord server. It's just a good, fun chat there, and everyone can hang out and just discuss Star Wars that we all love. Also, if you want to consider supporting us on Patreon, so we can pay for Josiah's internet boost. But also, all of our Twitters are the links to each of our Twitters are down there in the description. Also, Quinton's got his YouTube channel there, and Josiah's got Hezekiah's YouTube channel there. His son, he likes to do giveaways too. You can check him out and get some giveaways there. And also my YouTube channel. I'll throw up some games and stuff, and also Twitch. I might be streaming later tonight. We'll see. Might stream some Apex. But yeah, if you guys want to check all that out, and we'll be back here, same time, same channel.
Yeah. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to shout out everybody who watched live with us. It always makes it so much more fun. We can hear all your guys' thoughts and kind of play off of your guys' ideas too. So yeah, Rebellica, Asparagus, Agathon, Seth was in here.
Togo
Patrick,
Bap.
yeah,
Don't
Bruce.
forget Togo Bat.
Yeah, yeah, our Patreon member. Big shout out to him, Togo Bap, Bruce, and yeah, everybody who jumped on earlier too. Some of my Hawaiian friends, Too Big and Sensei. Yeah, big shout out to you guys. Appreciate all your guys' support.
All right. Awesome. Thanks everyone. We've enjoyed it. It's been a fun ride. Also, if you can hit that like for us, and also send it off to your friends too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys.
And, Tyler, what does Obi-Wan always say?
He says, "May the Force be with you, always."
Always.
May the Force be with you.